Hey, so what's up, guys? It's your boy Patience once again, and I decided to come at you guys with a little new one. In this one, I just wanted to kind of share my thoughts with you guys, just to see as to where exactly you guys are when it comes to listening to a lot of the stuff that we're having to listen to within the modern day and age that we're living in. I've got a few notes and points that I have written down. And I also have a few messages, documents that I had written down to our local government, asking for, as like an audience, that I may have a little word with them, or two, on the account of not only myself but people that I think would also have the same thoughts and the same beliefs, that if not I myself may have, then other people around them. Now, it's been said it's been 60 years since the last war. And since then, I guess you can say, I guess the world was promised that we would never really see a day like that again, right? That peace was the way that we wanted to move towards to. Hence why it was decided that most countries would begin to debuckle, as it were, or dismantle their weapons of mass destruction, as they call it. Now, that's a story for another day. Um, but there's a lot that goes into this discussion, that I really do want to bring out more in depth, and I don't think now would actually be the best time for that. But if we take history, and I reiterate history into consideration, the notion that when it did come to war, um, now this is times before my time, meaning I had not been born yet, how they went about employing people for war once things started getting out of hand and beyond the expectations of what one may have thought before they had actually joined into a war. So, meaning, obviously, that, well, we can bring certain points out later, if not in the nearer term. So, I have written down here, and these were stuff that I actually wanted to share with the locals, but obviously I had not received any response. I will post a little message showing proof of what I had posted in order to try and get myself a hearing with them. Not necessarily the entirety, as it were, but the Prime Minister as an individual, because we know that he is damn near the decision maker and the forefront of speaking outwardly for his team, to the nations and to many peoples, not just usually with the British tongue, but this can also be his speeches can also have a strong influence globally, internationally as well. So it's come to my own personal attention that the UK government has turned to its citizens of the island of England, and actually declared that they could be contemplating. They haven't necessarily joined a war yet, but they could be contemplating that they may, you know, um, um, you know, lean towards the notion of employing civilians to fight in a war, a modern day war. So, as to what I was trying to bring out earlier, we know that it's a common feature, at least a feature that was somewhat bragged about. I remember when I was going to school, my teacher, who was a female, a Caucasian female, she was bragging about how her men were brave and how they would stand up to go fight in a war once the government turned to them and said, it's time for you guys to stand up for your country. And she was obviously very proud and boastful about that. And I remember she also was very strong in expressing her feelings against the cowards, the people who weren't brave enough to go and fight for their country. But she did end it on a tone that was understandable from her point of view as to why certain people may or may not have. I believe that she said that she had family members that served as they would cater for those in England, but I don't remember her mentioning any men of her family that actually took up arms, of course, and went to go fighting for his country. My point being is that the ones that were, denying their stature, as it were, as a soldier or as a British civilian, were hauled out as cowards and were lightly thrown into prison, which was the teachings that I came to understand both in my youth as a student and as a young Christian man. So anyway, so these were some of the points that I wanted to bring out with our local government, and I really wanted to hear a response for Monday because it's obviously very important, and if you're considering asking people to fight for you, then surely you wouldn't mind having a conversation or two with a few I guess you could say curious individuals that most certainly wouldn't mind having a little word with you, because a lot of this stuff may or could seem alien, and asking a lot of people that may be new to this notion could seem quite a strong ask from a strong country, of course, which could also seem very intimidating. So anyway, I go on to ask a question here, or a point. Converts. So, though a lot of people may be intimidated, they may be scared, no one was really born or raised for war that I know. So fear is something that could actually come into consideration here. And then obviously have Christians, and well, we got people that ain't criminals, right? So, and nor are we born, raised, or bred one. But these are points that I hope to bring out a bit later on, that I was hoping to share with the Prime Minister. So it says, converts. Terrorists have the decency to convert their followers, not pull them out of their homes. Now, we might say to ourselves, but no one is pulled out of their homes. Well, if our notion is to brand people cowards and likelihood throw them into prison, what's the difference? And I do hope to bring a stronger point to this little point here. But I think just touching on that would have been a nice way to listen to our Prime Minister speak in full his notions, ideas and beliefs behind that point alone, so as to allow the nation to understand the empathy and the bold gestures, as it were, of Great Britain. So anyway, so understanding the differences between terrorist and government is a strong notion that I would like to have heard brought out. And now that I'm producing or publishing my work in this manner and in this fashion, maybe in some way this can help towards getting some sort of feedback from the Prime Minister and his party, so as to give us answers that can satisfy us, to strengthen us in case that day should actually befall us. Anywho, friend, a listening ear, willing to listen to civilian thoughts, reasonings, and intentions, to understand me as an individual and as an alien. Understanding that this is a huge country that is very modernized. It has evolved. It has grown so much since 60 years ago. And beforehand, you do speak with people, and speaking with many tongues and speaking with many listeners' ears. But do you consider the entirety when we consider our own actions? Because we know today that we live in is a very busy world, and it's very fast moving. In fact, it's probably one of the fastest the world has ever moved when talking about business and finance and duties and the amount of stuff that a human's likely to face within a day alone, yet alone a couple of days, weeks, months, even years, so as to, sit down and, kind of plan his or her life out, which is very important. So we're talking about friends here. Trust. Many of us may have trust issues. I like to bring myself into consideration here. When I was 25, I was robbed by England. A lot of money. So taking that into consideration, some people may say, life is good, life is bad. What gives you the right to say what you would or would not fight for when I would stand up and fight? That's not the point. What you would or would not do is great for you, and you know exactly what you fight for. But I'm a different individual from you. You understand? So what you choose to do, and who you choose to marry, and who you choose to befriend, and who you choose to fight for is down to you. Your beliefs are your beliefs. I choose to accept your way of living because currently I live in England. Was England my choice of a land to live in? No, I was born in England. But being born in England, from my perspective, I say to myself, I will accept the laws that have been bound upon me, as it were. What do I mean, as it were? Well, these are the points I aim to bring out now, and this is the point of why I wanted to have a discussion. But I'm here now talking in this fashion. So, culture. I don't trust white people, and I never have. I had a white friend when I was in primary school, but I never had much else in common, realistically. Much else in common with other white people that I've had friendships with in and out of school. We talk about trust. For instance, one of the main key features here would be racism when speaking of history. So I feel like we haven't even fully gotten over that notion yet. The other day I went to study in a course. It was an unemployment course because I was unemployed at the time. And in that course we had racism. We had racism stickers stuck up on the wall. I guess it was strongly standing against the notion of racism. Now, growing through my entire life, and I'm now 40 years old, none of my friends, and I've had loads of friends. When I say had, I'm talking of many tongues, many nations, because I live in England from school right the way up to this very day. I've had friends from multiple countries, multiple tongues. This includes European countries, Middle Eastern countries. I guess you could say, from, like, countries that have European tongues, as it were, so like taking French and, I guess you could say, into consideration Spanish, and Eastern. And so I've had quite a fluctuation, quite a variety of influences and bondships and friendships, and all these things help to create an individual. But that's not the point. The point is with all these people that I gathered friendship with, long-lasting friendships and some with short friendships, I've never come across racism in any way. I've never felt like they may be racist in some sort of way. I've never felt like they may keep me at bay due to some sort of racial reason. There was no reason for them. I never felt like they harbored any negative feelings in any way at all, indicating or pointing towards a notion of racism. Now, in my youth, I've had white friends. Not necessarily the closest, but people that I most certainly would converse with. However, the point here being is I have had indications or the idea hinting towards a notion that maybe somewhere in their family they could have a strong influence or ties to do with racism, whether it's still strongly active as to say that they still believe strongly in the ways of old, or that they most certainly were involved in history in some sort of activity that involved, if not racism, then slavery, because the jokes that they had or the things that they might say, I only encountered these with young white men at the time and also young white females. If I engage with females of any other culture or tongue, it's usually quite normal, simple, basic. You would expect that I like you and you like me kind of scenarios. Whenever because I've never really gone for a Caucasian female my darn self, simply because I'm not attracted to them my darn self. But whether they've been attracted to me, yes or no, I guess you could say is irrelevant. But I have had white Caucasian females, obviously, that I have kept I have associated myself with throughout schools and colleges and even work. Never really any kind of friendships. But within that period, those time periods, their indications towards their relationships with black men especially is quite prominent in the notion that there's a difference between black and white. Their emphasis on their relationships, their emphasis on their sexual relationships, their emphasis on their friendships. I ain't racist because some of my friends, or majority of my friends, are black. I never hear that kind of speech or those kind of indications come out of the mouths of any other race of individuals that I myself known, or would like to know. So that's what I mean about trust. There's certain things that we may say or may not say. There's certain posters that we may have or may not have that may have a strong indication as to our state of mind, as to the state of mind of an individual that I may be spending time with now, of a different culture, of a different race, of a different background, and I never have the indication of any sense of racism, simply because we never speak about that kind of stuff from my perspective onto them, and from their perspective outwards towards me. Only with white people, Caucasians. I've never really had a Caucasian friend. What do I mean by that? I've never kept contact with, like had friends, outings with white people on such a notion. Not saying that I haven't had bonding moments. Maybe we go out and play football, or maybe we've gone out to bars, but we've never allowed such activities to keep consistency, so as to keep lifelong friendships, etc. Obviously, there are people out there that do have these kind of connections. There's people out there that don't. So I'm speaking from a wholesome kind of view, and my own personal reasoning or points being brought out here is not necessarily for myself, but taking a bunch of people into consideration. So this is something that I would have liked to have listened to the Prime Minister himself answer. Understanding that we're living in a modern age that still has strong ties connected to the past, as it were, because we're still being taught, as it were, of a mind state that we may or may not already have, and how to keep that consistency for the future, on now knowing the messages that may be implemented into and onto us. Because asking people to go to war and fight for your ideals is a very strong notion, and a lot of people should have, if not do have, a lot to say about that. If not outwardly, then I'm pretty sure a lot of people have strong feelings. But again, we'll get back to that. When talking about trust and asking people to go fight in a war, another thing would be our conduct. Like I said, I was raised a young Christian man, and I would consider myself Christian, simply because I was raised one, and my parents are Christian, and majority of my friends Christian. So whether or not I myself may actually attend a church to serve God, I would have to consider myself a Christian, because I know the laws of the Christian, I guess we could say, empire, because it is like an empire, isn't it? I know what the Bible, I know a lot of what the Bible teaches, and through that I know what the Holy Father would expect from a lot of the individuals that try or have tried to walk in His name and to serve in His name. And taking that into consideration, this is a Christian country, so you could understand a lot of what I'm trying to say to you here. That bit there as well, would like to have heard a response from our local Prime Minister. So taking that into consideration, hygiene. Hygiene is also a very another important aspect, because if I go walking down the streets and I see a man or woman, Caucasian, and this individual stinks, I might remove myself from that individual. if the individual is French, if the individual is African, if the individual is Indian, Asian, if the individual is Turkish, Middle Eastern, could be anyone. If they have poor conduct in their natural moral hygiene, as it were, then the chances are, what do I mean? What do I mean by that? If that person is letting off bad odors, if that person smells, if that person even has, bad teeth, these are things that we do actually notice, and we do actually begin to judge individuals because that's what we do as humans. We may say this person's hair doesn't look as neat or as tidy, or this person's clothes doesn't look as neat or as tidy. In the modern day and age, we can understand that the world is very demanding, so people can't tend to themselves the way how we would. But in a country like Britain, where there's so many I guess we could say institutes that help people that are down and out, that it's almost hard to make that excuse. So the question then would be, why do we look so different? So taking that into consideration, hygiene, this would come under the notion of personal hygiene, but we also have outward hygiene. What do I mean by that? If I go walking down the street, I will see a bunch of pet owners, and majority of these pet owners would be white. If I watch TV, I'll see pet owners. A majority of these pet owners would be white. It's the teaching of pets, I would say, the notion of pets. But it's not just that. The point here would be how we have our pets. So, what do I mean? If you go walking down the street, you see a bunch of pet owners, and we believe in trying to keep the streets of London healthy, right? Clean. That's why there's so many bins around the country, which I'm a strong believer in, and I truly do appreciate, and I'm 100% for it. And these are one of the things that I actually kind of said to myself whilst growing up through the early 2000s to modern day, but I would say mid-90s to modern day, that once the the implementations of bins were being placed around the country on such a notion, that I thought was I began to take ear and heed and look upon the nation of England or Britain in a light as to say, I will keep paying attention to see how this may persist in the future, how it may proceed through the future. Anywho, yes, we do, or it has been implemented to prevent litter dropping. And not that this is anything per se that darn important, but if you go walking down the street, you will see people of all nations and all tongues simply just throwing their trash after they've used whatever item that it was that they were using. Once it has satisfied their needs, just like that, it goes away in the wind. And you could probably number the people in a day that you see actually use one of the bins that have been implemented and presented on the so many streets for us to use. Sometimes we may be standing right beside a bin and we just throw our litter right away. Anywho, but we're taking the pets into consideration. Now, I believe there was a law that had been put in to pick up after your pets, but we'll go a bit deeper into this because, yes, that is nice. It is nice. When you go walking down the street of England's, you're likely to see a lot of loot dropping from pets' leftovers, meaning a lot of dog crap, or not to dog poo, I'm trying to refrain from using strong words here. So we'll see a lot of dog poo all over the place. We see a lot of dog owners. We go to work. We get ourselves income. We like to look nice. We like to go on dates, take our females out, take our males out, even our children, go out for something to eat. Now, if I was to come round to your house and I was to sit down on your couch, do you smell of poop? I'm assuming your answer is no. Or would your house smell of poop? I'm assuming your answer is no. If I was to come to the house of number 10, which I've seen on TV, and I was to walk around, look behind shelves, look behind tables, look underneath chairs, or go into the comments, am I going to see poop? Chances are no. I've seen the gold stick on the table. I've seen that big book. I'm assuming it's so it helps with legislation where you may write new laws. It could be a Bible. I've seen the chairman's seat and the rows of seats where politicians and people alike may take their post. But if I was to look around, chances are I wouldn't see poop. If I was to go into a store, McDonald's, or if I was to go into KFC, August, or like a warehouse that sells planks of wood, etc., 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 chances are I'm not going to see poop. But if I come to your home, I'm likely to see poop, and we'll probably make a little joke about it because I live beside pet owners and I live amidst pet owners, and I've also been a pet owner of a dog, so I know how attentive you have to be and schedulized when taking into consideration how you're going to prioritize your life around a beast. And these are notions that I don't see happening on such a notion or such a regular basis. So there's only one outcome of that, is there not? Anywho, I myself live in Huddersfield, which is a large area and it's surrounded by a lot of greenery. But when I go walking down the street, I see a lot of dog poop. Now, I was talking about finances. We all make an income in some way, shape, or form. And we all like to look after ourselves and the people that we're with. So when I say I'm going to take my girlfriend out, or if I say that I'm going to go out with a family member, or maybe even my child, if I take them out to somewhere to eat, it's very unpleasant if I say, careful and watch your step because there's dog poop laying on the floor. It would be very unfortunate if you're having a wonderful time with your friends or your playmates, and as you're walking maybe back to your apartment, one of you actually step in dog poop, or maybe you're walking and you're eating on the street and you're having a nice conversation, but then you're abruptly distorted or pulled out of such a notion because on the ground there's dog poop. You try to avoid yourself or your partner from stepping in somebody else's leftovers. So my point here is we may even go to work, spend our lives working for a home, just to find that once we finally purchase it and we leave out the gate, we find dog poop on the floor. Another thing is I was living in a council house in 2018, which was in Barnsley. At that time of my attendance, I guess you could say, but my time of living within that area, most of the population that I saw was Caucasians, and there was dog poop everywhere. Which was obviously not nice on the back streets, near the supermarket, on the little tight, thin roads. There was dog poop everywhere. So anyway, I asked the council, the tenant that was living in the property before me, if they had pets, and they stated yes. Why? And I had to mention because there was a lot of bugs. Now, we know that to accumulate bugs, you've got to be living in a state where your hygiene may not be on par to the norm. And if you're living with pets, that would be the easiest way to conquer or achieve such fallen standards, as it were. Now, I can only speak of my experience alone. This was the first time that I'd ever experienced living in such a quality of a situation that one is to call a home. But there was bugs in the floorboards. There was bugs oozing out from the ceilings. There was bugs in the bathroom, on the stair landings, in the bedroom. There's little, they call them, I can't remember the name of them now, but they're like these little kind of orangey kind of bugs, and they got like they look kind of furry. But they were coming in so many quantities, and I've never seen. I've actually seen those bugs before, but not like that. They were all over the place, and I've only really seen them in kind of apartments where there's either pets, but not nowhere near as much, or in locations where it's not really so built up, as it were. And even then, usually, whenever I have seen them, because I'm pretty sure that I have seen them before, it's like before I moved to Barnsley, where I previously saw them, was in another area that was actually in Huddersfield, and it was a location where, again, there was many Caucasians, a lot of pets, and we used to notice that how a lot of the tenants used to clean after their pets, because maybe their pet went inside their property, and so they would use a means of cleaning that was not necessarily deemed hygienic at all by our standards, at least. And they would hang the cleaning material over banisters, and so this would attract a lot of bugs, of course, and that's where I noticed those bugs. They call them like something to do with your carpet, but the carpet larvae, I believe they call them. But they're the only 2 times that I've ever noticed those things. So my point here being is having or accumulating for yourselves pets of a certain nature is likely, if your standards and your level of hygiene is not on par to the norm, is likely to accumulate bugs. And if you do start accumulating bugs to the point to where you now have an infestation, chances are you're going to want to just up and move to another location. That's not the point. The point here being is someone's going to have to move in. When that individual moves in, if it's a council situation like how it was for me, at that time anyway, then the council's going to treat you and that property like they would treat anyone else in their property and as themselves as that individual, because it's just a property and you're just a new individual. So I remember making complaints, and it's probably on their log. It would be Barnsley Council. It should be on their logs that I was complaining about bugs. They were all over the place. And they came to try to deal with the situation, but they didn't try to deal with it in a professional manner. They just tried to block them out. They didn't necessarily try to sterilize the apartment. As a result, I had to leave that apartment. The point being is that seemingly our love for pets damages homes, has the potential to damage homes. They damage parks. These are things that I notice, just the same way how I notice the bins. If you have your children and you take them to the park, then they're playing around where a lot of pet owners seem to find it quite the norm to go walking their pets. In other words, the priority of their pet as to the priority of your children seemingly is either equal or deemed more so in the favor of the pets. And we all know this is a common norm. If you watch TV, it's a common norm. If you actually go to these parks, it's a common norm. You're guaranteed to see people walking their pets, dogs, especially through parks, where people go on romantic dates, where people picnic, and where people may just go and stroll, do work, etc., etc., etc. Now, we know England is not filled with filled with poverty, meaning that it's an upbuilt country, that it's a well-educated country, which means we do perform pretty well here in England. Again, my point being is that taking it from my point before, trust, and now we're speaking of war. We know war is an outcome, is something that can take time to actually come into action. So this war could have been going on a very long time ago. You might say to yourself, when could this have actually taken effect, actually come about as to, a problem actually arousing? It could have been any time, but we know 60 years ago, and if you go back a couple hundred years from then, history has a lot more incidents that have been written down and scrolled through the pages of time to survive through to the day, and well preserved, might I add. So taking that into consideration, I remember hearing a lot of speech that it was getting very annoying that we was getting a lot of foreigners coming over and snapping up all the jobs. And so a lot of this looting, could it be due to that? Dropping a lot of loot or pollution, as it were, on the floors of England. I can't necessarily speak of any other multicultural continent or state globally, because I tend to find that if you live in England, then many other Western countries are more than likely going to resemble England. So I would have to ask if the conduct of Caucasians and people alike have standards of such so as to disrespect their culture and their civilians in such a way so as to loot on the floor and pollute. Because if you ask me, it's very disrespectful. If you ask me, it's very disgusting. If I was to come and shake your hand after tampering with myself and getting my hands dirty, and that was to shake your hand, reach my hand out so as to shake your hand, would you stretch your hand out in return so as to shake my hand, or would you rather I wash my hands first? I notice a lot of the politicians are well dressed. They wear suits, socks, shoes. Their hair is well neat and tidy, polished in most cases, and they speak with a well polished tongue. So taking these things into consideration, does that mean that as like myself, you understand the difference between cleanliness and hygiene and disrespect? And if so, taking that into consideration, when you go walking down the streets of England, whether it's in a posh state or it's in a state that's quite deprived, like I can speak of many areas within England, southeast London, which is where I was raised and born, and you have areas like taking all of the south into consideration, which would be from your southeast, south to southwest, west, north, east, taking all of these locations into consideration, because I'm sure we all go about those areas, not just people that are not so well off, but people that are also well off. Do you notice this level of hygiene? And do you see it as respect, or do you see it as disrespect? Not only that, but disrespect for your civilians and disrespect for your societies, as it were. So when taking this into consideration, do you consider this when you think about asking your civilians to go and fight for you as well in the modern day? So that's taking trust and hygiene into consideration. So these were things that I wanted to ask the Prime Minister. I've only gone through 1, 2, 3 points, and I have 3 pieces of paper and a hell of a lot more, all loaded with information that I would have liked to have shared with our local Prime Minister. And the idea and the notion behind that was to have at least a 3-day to 10-day I guess you could say a convention. It's not necessarily a convention, but a meeting plan, so as to speak our minds a little bit in front of the entire world, of course, not just England, to see exactly how we think, what we may be thinking when we talk about asking people to take up arms, which is another strong point that I would like to bring out, but not at this moment. Another point would be, from where I left off, is history. Now, we know history covers a lot of regions. It is very wide and it is very vast. And we all can relate to it in some way or another, because history has affected us all. And we would all like to see a brighter future. And that is something that I'm pretty sure not just myself, but majority of the civilians of England and the majority of the people around the world have been working towards. And so on that note, history, Hitler, Hitler had a strong belief and a strong singular goal, and his advances were boldly practiced and praised and encouraged even by religious leaders. Taking that into consideration, my point here being is we could relate this to the beginning of my text, which was terrorists, and how they employ people. Now, there's obviously a stronger point that I'm trying to reach here, But I believe that this is a nice way of advancing to that, in order to get an understanding of, which I thought would have been a great way of getting an understanding of how our politicians may actually be thinking when they're thinking about advocating a little situation so as to involve us civilians, people with active flowing lives, into their, I guess you could say, schemes and plans and notions, so as to send us off into a situation that they think is not only better for us, but also for a future that is better for all of us. Hitler seemed, it's been taught that he believed in a stronger world, and he stood against many nations that didn't agree with his, I guess you could say, concord, but his own beliefs and his reasons for his movements. And it was also brought out that he believed in a particular world. Now, it may be hard to hear this kind of stuff, but as we're behaving in a notion that our ancestors did, it's almost like reigniting the embers of history, isn't it? And bringing it into modern day and saying that it's okay because we're going to get ourselves out of this mess. We are going to get ourselves out of this mess as we have done in the past. So, Hitler believed in a certain particular world. Now, when I speak of Hitler, there's also a strong reason behind that. Hitler was also a Caucasian, a white man, and he believed, as it were, some people say that he was of a certain ethnicity, but his mind state was certainly strongly in favor of one notion and one belief. Why? Some people could even argue, could he have been indoctrinated? Could he have been brainwashed, as it were? There could be many reasons as to why his actions and notions were so strong and so idyllic, as it were. But all of this is irrelevant. But what is relevant is what his goals ended up pointing and directing towards, which was a strong image that had been stamped into the memoirs of history, as it were, so as to exist and prevail through to this very day, which, if you ask me, our actions resemble that tyrant, that beast. So, taking that into consideration, he believed in a certain world that indicated it was taught of a certain race and a certain peoples and a certain nation and a certain tongues. So taking that into consideration and taking war into consideration, do we or can we then believe that this is a very intricate country and that it is one that has strong ties in connection to the past, because obviously we're still acting and behaving in that way? So as to believe that there could be a hidden agenda that we could actually be working towards in a fashion that may have been harder to do so in the past, but have found a wiser and smarter way of trying to approach that for modern day or even the future. When speaking of wars, war is not something that I entertain. War is not something that I agree with, and I don't look on any of my brethren in a way so as to have war with them. I currently live in Huddersfield, and my neighbours, majority of them are Caucasian, and they are very nuisancey. They make up so much noise, which from my perspective is very abnormal, because I came from southeast London and there were very multicultural backgrounds spread across those regions, and so I was able to identify certain behaviors of cultures, so as to understand how to maybe behave under certain conditions so as to avoid and prevent an outcome that could escalate and go beyond the norm, I guess you could say, when taking into consideration what I said at the beginning, which is I was born and raised in England, so I choose to respect the laws that are above me, because obviously I would prefer the better outcome for myself rather than the worse outcome, the worse being becoming a criminal. Anywho, so a lot of my neighbors, they're very nuisancey. The walls are very thin, and we all know that. And our tendencies about that is very abrupt and very disgusting when trying to take your neighbors or other people into consideration, as well as my neighbors a few doors down, ensure that they make up as much noise as they can so as to allow the world to know that they do exist. I've never known other people to be this way, and if I do, there's usually a purpose or a reason behind their behaviors and their actions, whereas over here, there is none. So all I can do is accumulate this knowledge and say, wow, well, this is how Caucasians are likely to act under these kind of under these kinds of situations, I guess you could say, especially when we believe that no one else may be looking or watching or listening, that if we can get away with something, then we're more than likely going to try and at least cross as much a barrier, cross the line as far as we can, so as to get away with as much as we can, because it seems to be okay. So we know that seemingly, from my perspective, how I observe and how I look at things, this is how Caucasian folks are likely to behave, especially when we believe that it seems to be okay. The things that we can get away with is my point. And taking something as dramatic as power into consideration, we know that you're not likely to share everything in office with us, the civilians. And if so, then you're bound to do it in a roundabout way so as to make things not so understood for the listener to understand. Because I can say to myself, I understand the UK government fully. Obviously, I trust and believe in the UK government, but I would never have believed that the government could take into consideration sending its civilians, or contemplating on sending its civilians into a situation that they may or may not want to get themselves into, both morally and I guess you could say sanely, because there could be so many reasons as to why a person may not want to take part in going to fight for you, because life is a lot more intricate than just a button or two that says yes or no, or do this or do that. Also, when speaking to or with, do you truly listen to who's speaking to you, pending on who's speaking to you, or do you already have a strong tracked mind? So these are some of the points that I brought out, and some of the points that I want to continue bringing out over the next couple of days. On my channel, of course. I would like to know what you guys think about this, and most certainly I would like to hear your thoughts, if it's something that I'm overthinking my darn self, or if it's something that we would all like to actually sit down and have ourselves listen to, rather than being told what to do. in a certain way to where it may seem as if we don't have a choice. Um, I want to get my goal and my dream is to get myself into a relationship. I don't want a relationship. I would like to get myself into a relationship. Why? Because I look at certain people around me and I say to myself, I will learn from this individual. I will learn from that individual. We don't usually take things, we usually accept the order of things. We buy things, we present ourselves for things, we don't just take. And so, taking this into consideration, these were things that I would like to ask our politician. But ending on this note, there is a stronger point I would like to bring out, but I'll bring it out a bit later on. But for those that have listened to me yap away a little bit about my own personal experiences and the experiences of many, those forgotten and those with remembrance, I would like to see what this brings out of you when considering about sharing your thoughts with the rest of the United Kingdom and all those within and about it. Again, I would like to say that I do have stronger points, and these points will be brought out. So it is very important to hear a lot back from you guys, because the more I hear from you guys, it's the more that I can share and obviously implement into my work as well. So it's to let you guys feel more. Somewhat important, as to, when considering people like myself who may not feel like they have a listening ear in certain ways, but is most certainly viewed so as to be considered in certain matters and fashions when the times rise. So anyway, guys, it's your boy Patience. I hope you like what you be heard, and leave your likes, your thumbs, and your comments down below. And if you have any questions, guys, but take note, this situation and this little chat here is not for promotional causes, and it's not for a pay wage of any sort. It's not to publicize myself in any way at all. So I don't expect to get any kind of favor from this video. Because this has nothing to do with my work. I don't expect to get any credit or any kind of credits from this publish at all. In fact, I would even go as far as to say if I was to raise any kind of major attention from this financially or fiscally, I would like to donate that fund to a certain cause that I have not in mind yet, but should a situation like that arouse, just so that we do know that this is not for popularity. This is not a popularity stunt, and this is not trying to kind of promote myself in any way so as to gain myself popularity. This is coming from the heart, and I'm trying to get an understanding of what we truly are thinking about in this modern day and age. But anyway, guys, it's your boy Patience. I hope you like what you be hearing. Leave your thumbs, your likes, and your comments down below. And if you do have any queries, I'll be out in the next station hopefully soon, guys.
Hollywood, Hollywood, that's your boy. Hollywood. He puts